Now, let me ask you, was there advance warning that the flood would be as bad as it was?
No, sir.
There was not?
There was not.
Had it been raining for quite some time?
Oh, it had been raining for a month.
Right.
It just kept raising. It got up to 57.3.
Above flood stage?
That was, no, the reading of the on the gauge was 57.3.
Uh-huh.
And you could ride from Barrett and Broadway all the way to Shawnee Park on that. Now, 3rd Street, you know where that is.
Right.
Well, you could ride out 3rd Street, and you know where Summers Herman's...
Right.
Well, you could ride right up past that in a boat. All that was underwater, see?
Business didn't continue
no.
during that period?
No. Things was... now, the main part of town down there around Main and Market and whatnot was higher, see?
Right.
And there wasn't no water on them.
But they were like an island, weren't they?
They were just an island, that's all.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Now, you come out... do you know where Floyd Street is when you get out towards the L&N?
Right.
All right. I live up on Bar B, and I was up here, but I couldn't get nowhere. Our office was at 5th and Broadway, but it was under.
Uh-huh.
So I was getting telephone calls. I was at the Board of Education, saying on call all the time. And I got a call here at home that they'd had an explosion at Halleck Hall. That's Manual now. And I went down under the hill where the expressway goes out here, 65.
Right.
Well, I went down just about there on the hill, and I wanted to get over to Manual, see? And there was boats there, but there was nobody to take me over. And he says, "Can you row a boat?" And I said, "Yeah." Well, he says, "Take one and go on." Told him my business, see?
Right.
And I went down Brandeis through 1st Street, and when I got down to Manual, the only way I could get in was to walk in on a pontoon bridge, see? So I tied up there and went in, and of course it wasn't, somebody had turned some gas on in the kitchen, and it had ignited and just blowed the lids off of the stove, see?
Nothing really severe, though.
Didn't amount to anything, no. So I stayed there for a little while.
How far underwater was that area?
Well, there was boats riding through 1st Street. It was about 4 feet deep.
About 4 feet.
Yeah.
That's quite a bit of water.
Yeah. And right down under the hill here on Floyd Street, for me, I had a fellow that was working over at Manual at that time, Leroy Greathouse. He's retired now, and he lived here on Floyd Street. And he had a car there, and the water was about 18 inches over the top of it.
Mr. Bryan, I want to thank you for your call.
Okay.
Have a happy day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. We've had many famous American heroes visit Louisville, numbering among them Lindbergh, Ronway Kerrigan, and Babe Ruth. Is that right?
That's right, Babe Ruth.
Babe Ruth visited Louisville.
Not once, but several times.
Uh-huh.
But the ones I particularly recall, I went to St. X between 1932 and 36.
Right.
And the principal there at that time was a jolly gentleman named Brother Benjamin.
Right.
And Brother Benjamin was a discoverer of Babe Ruth.
How was that?
Well, he was taught at a foundling home there in Baltimore, and as you know, Babe Ruth was a foundling.
Right.
And in the playground, Babe Ruth hit one out of the play yard and broke a window.
Uh-oh.
And with that, he ran and got under the bed in the dormitory. And Brother Benjamin grabbed him and said, "If you hit him like that, you don't have any business running under a bed. You ought to run toward first base." And it was through Brother Benjamin's efforts that Babe Ruth got into baseball. But you know, he never forgot Brother Benjamin. When that Yankee powerhouse came north after spring training, he'd bring the whole team by St. X. Now, he did this for 3 years. And it was sort of a holiday we'd go back into that old gym back there on Jacob Street that had the running track above, and the Yankees would show up. And there was Gehrig, and there was Lazari, and the Crosetti, and, of course, Ruth. And the thing I remember about Ruth most, he was built just like a funnel. He must have been a good 3 feet across his shoulders. He was the ugliest man I believe I've ever seen. And his head fitted right down on his body. And his ankles were no larger than my wrist. And when he'd talk to us, why, we'd listen. And then when he'd finish, he'd go over, and a tiring man that he was, he put his arm around Brother Benjamin. And Brother Benjamin was 5 foot. He had a gray fringe and bald-headed. And when he put his arm around Brother Benjamin and, in effect, squeezed him a little bit, Brother Benjamin would just, well, he was in 7th heaven.
Well, now, how old were you doing this?
Oh, let's see, I was about 15.
You were about 15. And for any young man about 15, of course, baseball is a large part of his life. Oh,
in those days, because in the summertime, you either were a good ball player or you were a good reader. You didn't have choices.
Right.
You played ball, but he'd take the St. X baseball team out to Parkway Field, and they'd play the exhibition game. But it was always a thrill to see Babe Ruth, and I just glory in the fact that I was just a part of history at that time, because he was undoubtedly part of our heritage.
Right, and you say Brother Benjamin was the principal at St. X?
That's right, yes, sir. So he came through for 3 years, and every year was always a delight, but that was Brother Benjamin's day. He was very well pleased to crawl back for another 364 days and wait for Babe Ruth to come through again.
Mr. Kellerman, thank you, sir.
It was delightful. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Discussing things that have occurred in Kentucky in honor of Kentucky's bicentennial anniversary. And Mrs. Hunter, you had an observation?
Yes, I said that I wondered if anybody had mentioned anything about the Clark Bridge being opened in 1929, because that was the bridge between Jeffersonville and Louisville.
Right.
And I know the American Legion National Convention they were anxious to get it done for them to, because their convention was in September.
I see. So they worked like almost overtime to complete that bridge.
Yes, they did. Yes, and of course I'm 85 years old. I was born in Louisville, but I've lived in Jeffersonville for many, many, many years.
Right.
But at the time I was married, at the time that bridge was being built, I remember so well, because Mr. Hunter, I was married, and Mr. Hunter was a contractor, and he put a system in out at the Mangle Company, manufacturing company.
Put a system in?
Yes, that was a woodworking factory at that time.
Oh, yes.
I don't know what they do now. But they put those floor systems in that factory.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that we finished it up, and we had to go back and forth on the ferry boat.
Right. Now, when somebody says the Clark Bridge, one does not think offhand or have the realization, but the Clark Bridge, before the Clark Bridge, there was no bridge.
No. Well, yes, there was no bridge. No bridge to go back and forth, to walk back and forth.
There was
the Big Four bridge.
Right, the train track, the train bridge, right?
That was a train bridge.
Right.
But they also had a walking place that you could walk.
Right.
Because I remember when that was built, too.
But there was no, for vehicles, there was no bridge.
No, but later on, the interurban went across that. The train from Indianapolis went to Louisville.
Right. Now, we had, initially, the only bridge across was the Big Four train track with a pedestrian walkway on the side.
That's right.
All right. How did they move the cars back and forth? Was there a ferry boat? A ferry boat. How much?
They used to have 2 ferry boats, the city of Jeffersonville and the city of Louisville.
How much did it cost to take a ferry boat across?
Well, I can remember that after I got out of high school, I worked in Louisville, and I started at Belknap, and I remember we used to go on the ferry, and we used to get 10 trips for a quarter. Can you believe that or not?
10 trips for a quarter.
Yes, heard of it.
Thank you very much for calling.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
This afternoon we are sort of looking at Kentucky's history past, and we have Mrs. Snowden with a memory, I think. Mrs. Snowden?
I heard the ladies say, you won, that there was no bridges across the Ohio that you could go other than
The Big Four, as I understand
the
it.
Big Four. Well, that is wrong.
Is it?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The K&I.
Let's see. Now, the K&I was another train.
No, it had a driveway on the side.
Let's see. Similar. Yes, that's right. That is.
Still has it.
That is as you look down the river, we have the Clark Bridge.
And then the Big Four.
Then the Big Four.
Then the K&I.
Then the K&I. And that is correct. Was it in operation before 29?
Yes, sir. That was in operation before 1911.
1911.
Yes, my father passed on in 1911, and we drove horses and buggies across that bridge quite a few years before he passed on.
I appreciate that because I had forgotten about the K&I. In my mind, I was looking at the river and the bridge, the bridges across it,
Yeah.
and I had forgotten about that, but I have driven across that myself. It is a harrowing experience. Thank you, Mrs. Colson. Bye-bye. Charles Green, your reflections of years past in Kentucky.
All right, a couple of your questions about the inter-urban car, how they went over the Big Four and the K&I Bridge.
Right.
They were run by electricity, by trolley wire.
Ah.
And the ones that went to Indianapolis had two coaches. You had like a club car in the back was a little more deluxe, and the front car was just seats.
Tourists.
And then, that's right, tourist day. And then you had one running out of here, Shelbyville, Kentucky. You had one running to Fern Creek. You had one running to Orel, and I believe one ran up through Indiana, through Utica.
Right. Now, these weren't trolleys, though.
They were trolleys, yes. They were
electric wire trolleys.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Now, your Big Four bridge was an engineering feat, and it was in the history books when I was coming up through school. France does not own that bridge. The people that own that bridge is Kentucky and Indiana Railroad.
Uh-huh.
That's the reason why they call it K&I.
Right. Listen, you mentioned the incandescent lamp, and I would like to ask you if it's true or if you were familiar with the fact that Edison spent some time in the Louisville area.
Oh, yes, I have been. Anybody that's been born in Louisville knows that, because if you look at the Courier, this morning's Courier, you'll see the house, a picture of the house that Edison lived in up on Washington Street.
Well, did he work, what company?
They tell me, I think he worked with Western Union down here. He was a telegraph operator.
Ah, this was before his...
before the discovery of the electric lights, sure. Sure. But...
well, it's been interesting for me not being, born in the Louisville area and recapping some of its history this afternoon. It's been extremely interesting.
Oh, I'll tell you, I think you did a wonderful thing this afternoon, because... I don't believe you'll have to hold an audience very much, because I believe you have it. But this afternoon, I think it's especially interesting on kind of a dreary day, and people reminiscing. It's something like this should be really, the station should put it on tape for a long time to play it back to get a lot of interesting stories.
Well, it is being recorded, and perhaps...
the whole thing.
Right, and perhaps another month or so we might be able to play it back and listen to it.
Some of the things for this 200th year, I think it's wonderful.
Right. Mr. Green, thank you for calling.
Thank you for your kindness.
Bye-bye.
Bye.